The Skagit River, its tributaries, and the land that they drain form the largest watershed in the Puget Sound Basin and the second largest watershed in Washington State. The Skagit River is 120 miles in length. The northernmost 25 miles are in Canada. The Skagit Watershed provides about 1/3 of all the fresh water entering Puget Sound and is also home to 1/3 of all the salmon in Puget Sound. This program will serve as an introduction and provide you with information about the Skagit River watershed, its geography, and land uses. We will begin at the top of the watershed, at its headwaters, and travel downstream as we explore the distinctive geography of our watershed. The Skagit Watershed begins high in the mountains of the North Cascades. These are steep mountains with many glaciers. In fact, the North Cascades contain more glaciers than any other mountain range in the United States, outside of Alaska. The glaciers are rivers of ice which store lots of water. These glaciers keep our rivers and streams fed with water even throughout the dry summer months. As a matter of fact, about 10 billion gallons of water per day come from the glaciers, streams, snow, and rainfall of the Skagit Watershed. All this water flows down the river and out into Puget Sound. As we move from Canada down the Skagit River, one feature we can't miss is Ross Lake, the largest lake in the watershed. Ross Lake is about 20 miles long and extends all the way into Canada. But Ross Lake hasn't been a lake for very long. If we could go back in time about 100 years, we would see the Skagit River flowing through the valley, which now contains this lake. That's because Ross Lake was formed by the construction of Ross Dam. Ross Dam is the largest dam on the Skagit, and together with the two smaller dams just downstream, are operated by Seattle City Light. The two dams downstream are Diablo Dam and Gorge Dam. These three dams provide about 80% of the electricity used by the city of Seattle. That's a lot of power. Once we get below Gorge Dam, the river turns into a river again. And in this fast-moving stretch, we often see whitewater rafters and kayakers enjoying the wild rides. Further downstream, near the town of Marble Mount, the Cascade River joins the Skagit, and the river begins to slow down. As it slows, it also starts to meander, or twist and turn like a snake, creating features like oxbow lakes and wetlands, important places for birds, salmon, and other wildlife. Downstream from Marble Mount, right at the town of Rockport, the largest tributary to the Skagit adds its water. This is the Sauk River, and it drains the second tallest mountain in the watershed, a volcano named Glacier Peak. Just as we enter the town of Concrete, another river joins the Skagit, the Baker River. The Baker River drains Mount Baker, the largest mountain in the watershed. The Baker River is the only tributary to the Skagit that is dammed. Lake Shannon and Baker Lake are formed by the two dams which are operated by Puget Power. These dams provide electricity to people that live in the Skagit watershed and others in Northwest Washington. Continuing to follow the river downstream, we gradually leave the mountains and foothills behind as the river's floodplain becomes wider and flatter until finally we reach what is known as the Skagit Flats. This rich, flat farmland was deposited by the Skagit River over thousands of years. The river continues to wind its way through the towns and farms of the Flats until it reaches its final destination, Puget Sound. Where the river meets the Sound, another important landform is created, the Skagit Delta. This huge wetland area is created as the river breaks up into many smaller channels, and the tide coming in and out floods parts of the delta. The Skagit Delta is a very important place for migrating birds. The delta is also important to migrating salmon. They use it for a fattening up area in their smolt phase before going out into the salt waters. Now that we've been introduced to the geography of the Skagit Watershed, let's take a look at some of the important land uses here. Land uses are how humans use the land and its resources. We'll explore 7 major land uses as we move from the lower Skagit back up to the mountainous parts of the watershed. One significant land use around the lower Skagit is farming. These rich soils grow many important food crops, seed crops, and flower bulbs. Skagit farmland is also important for dairy farms, which produce lots of milk every day. Urban development is another land use. Cities and towns provide places for people to live, shop, and work. Houses, stores, schools, businesses, factories, malls, parking lots, and roads are all urban land uses. Forests are another kind of land use here. Forests provide many things to our watershed. Their roots hold the soil and keep it from eroding. The trees hold water and help prevent flooding. They provide habitat for many types of wildlife. Forests in the Skagit watershed are also important for timber. Trees are grown on public and private lands to be harvested for lumber, paper, and other wood products. Salmon are another important user of the watershed. Salmon spend part of their lives in the rivers, streams, and wetlands here. Many people fish for salmon, including commercial and recreational fishers. Indian people fish for salmon today, as their ancestors have done for thousands of years. The salmon are an important part of their culture and their way of life. And many people like to fish recreationally for steelhead, trout, and salmon. Recreation is another land use. People need places to get out and do the things that they enjoy. There are public and private lands for fishing, launching boats, swimming, hiking, camping, snowmobiling, skiing. Think about what you like to do outside and where you go to have fun. Dams to provide electricity are another way we have chosen to use our watershed. There are 5 dams altogether in the Skagit watershed. Back up at the top of the watershed in the mountains of the North Cascades is the land use we call wilderness. Wilderness lands cover much of the upper watershed in North Cascades National Park and the Mount Baker Snoqualmie National Forest. In this area of steep mountains and rushing streams, people are not a major presence. This wilderness has been set aside for the future, not only for our children to experience the wildness of the land, but also for the many animals that inhabit this place. The wilderness also helps keep our watershed clean and provides a place for other types of recreation, like mountain climbing and backpacking. Now that we have been introduced to the Skagit watershed, where it is, and how we use it, it's time to get out there and learn about your piece of the Skagit watershed. What are your local streams, and where do they go? What lives in them? What kinds of land uses take place around them? How are the salmon and the other living things doing in your part of the watershed? On our field trip, we'll try to answer some of these questions.
Hi. You ready to be a teacher?
Mm-hmm.
All right. This is going to be your spot right here.
Okay.
And you're actually going to teach about this plant right here. Really important plant in the riparian area. It's called a sword fern.
When you prepare for your field trip, remember to wear warm clothes. Be prepared for rain or shine. Rubber boots are nice to wear when you're studying a stream, so bring them along if you have some. We'll be spending the whole day outside, exploring and studying our watershed. You will also study in your classroom and at home. The more we learn about this special place we live in, the better we can all take care of it.